I'm based over in the Royal Docks at a building called the Crystal, and we basically coordinate Siemens' approach globally with regards cities. So I've been asked a few questions, or asked to focus on a few questions, and I'll give you kind of Siemens' view on this, but I'd be interested also to actually hear some views from the floor. But also, we've got a Siemens stand just outside, so if you don't have time now, please come and talk to me, and I'd like to hear from you, because obviously you're the people with the experience. So the first question was, why does real-time data hold the key? And I think Miguel actually covered a lot of this already, which is really good to hear. But basically, what infrastructure you need in place to make sure that you can actually access this data and really get the advantages, and also about this thing like collaboration, which Miguel mentioned. How can private sector and public and others work together? So he also mentioned there's also lots of data and lots of change. So this is my kind of version of the Blade Runner. I don't know whether you've seen this before. But anyone know where this is? You've seen it before, Callum, but anyone know? There's a prize. It could be a prize.
It's the Millennium, the streets were car-free.
No, it's actually the Vatican, and it's the inauguration of the previous Pope. And if you fast forward to the current Pope, which is just 8 years later, it's a completely different, obviously, focus. So just to show that, obviously, technology has moved even in those 8 years, and that was 7 years ago. If I had a colleague who managed to get the tickets for the 100 meters final at the Olympics, and he was the only person who actually watched it, because everybody else was just following the race, watching Usain Bolt. You may as well watch it on TV. So obviously, technology is changing, and also Miguel mentioned also data. So I guess is anybody in the room that hasn't actually been onto Twitter or WhatsApp this morning? I guess I'm speaking to the converted, but there's lots of obviously data generated. Whether it's useful, I guess, and whether it's refined, I guess, is the other question. But clearly, lots and lots being generated. And obviously, the forecasts are obviously they're even creating these new terms. 44 zettabytes of data for 44 trillion gigabytes by 2020. But obviously, if we could start to analyze that, maybe we'd save a bit more time. And as well as counting the grains of sand, which that equates to, we could probably spend more time on the beach and maybe go to Barcelona and spend some time there. But I guess that's the other message. It's all about saving time. But, we even though we're creating more data than ever before, and even though we're only analyzing less than 1% of this data, or actually using it, the World Economic Forum announced that, or suggested that only 15% of assets are actually connected. So there is opportunity there to actually connect more and more assets, but clearly it has to be done with the user, with the people in mind, as Miguel mentioned. Now, we kind of talk about, infrastructure. What kind of infrastructure do you need? Clearly, you need the basic infrastructure to work. So if you have your roads and your train tracks and your trains, clearly without that, there's probably not much point using Citymapper to get around if you've got no access to public transport. So clearly, you need that in place. And also, you need energy systems to actually power a lot of the stuff that we're doing. Now, we talk about electrification. We think electrification is the future, but clearly also, other things play the mix, like hydrogen. But you need a robust infrastructure. Now, intelligent infrastructure. So this is a picture of the Paris Line 1 metro, which is driverless. In fact, I was on the DLR yesterday, and someone was asking the assistant, where's the driver? So even though we're kind of used to the DLR system, and also the Paris Line 1 metro has been running for a while now, driverless, clearly that wouldn't work if we didn't have the data to actually make sure that it doesn't crash into the train in front. And then when we look at kind of the possible future of autonomous vehicles, clearly we need data, 5G, as David mentioned, and also the data to actually make sure that we can actually start to fully integrate this infrastructure, so that your buildings are starting to talk to your energy systems, which are starting to talk to your transport systems, but obviously have the people, us, the users in mind. So it's all about, about increasing productivity, it's about increasing efficiency, giving us more time to spend time on the beach, but also about improving our quality of life. which is why we're all here. Mikhail talked about collaboration. So we're working on a number of projects with lots of different partners, large and small, around the world. So we're involved in some of the EU Horizon 2020 projects like Triangular in Manchester, which is also working with Stavanger and Eindhoven. Sharing Cities, which is over on the east, so Greenwich, Milan and Lisbon. With follower cities Warsaw and Bordeaux. Smarter Together is Munich. We're actually working with Expo Dubai, so we're the digitalization partner for Dubai Expo. We're trying to create, or the aim is to create a blueprint for a future smart city. Now, this is a brownfield site. Clearly, we're also working with, how do you actually make a city like London or Barcelona, which exists already, how do you also make existing cities smart? But we're working with India, so we're leading the European consortium on the 100 Smart Cities approach. One of the first cities is Elleru. So again, we're trying to, how can the cities grow from, these are fairly small cities, only about 500,000 people, up to 3 to 4 million people, but how can we actually provide the services which help these cities develop sustainably? Because we also have a big focus on the climate, and you mentioned air quality. Clearly, we need to make sure that we don't just grow and it's a sprawl. We need to make sure it's done sustainably. We're working with Singapore, data analysts, trying to make Singapore even more efficient. Similar thing on Hong Kong, that's focused on air quality, and we're also working with a number of cities, including Guangzhou North City, 23 square kilometres of city. Again, how can they develop a brand new city, but again, do it sustainably, and also, again, with the user, with the people who are going to be living there, working there, with them in mind. So the other bit was, well, how can local authorities, I think, Mikhail, you probably answered this question already, but how can local authorities use data more effectively? How can they refine this data? And just one of the things, we suggest, well, if you do use data, this is from McKinsey, but some of the benefits, we talked, one of the questions about the costs. Well, if you save 300 million euros, that's great as well, but also you can save 30 to 300 lives every year. You can make your daily commute even quicker, which means you have more time to spend with your family and spend more time going to the beach. Faster emergency response times, save litres of water. So again, obviously water is becoming a scarce resource, as well as other things. So again, the fact that we can actually start to save resources. I think again, Mikhail mentioned resilience and crime, which is obviously a big factor. But again, on the right-hand side, key thing there for me is, again, it's all about quality of life. And I think Mikhail's images of the little boy, just kind of summed it up. So kind of going fast-forwarding a little bit. So once you have all this data, and can we actually really create a so-called smart city? Well, we're a big kind of manufacturing company. We've been working in manufacturing for a long time. And this thing called digital twin. Anyone not know what digital twin is? Okay, so so basically what we've done is, you can create a 3D model of a car, or even the Mars rover, as we did with NASA. You can actually build it, design it, manufacture it, engineer it, manufacture it, and test it, simulate it for 10,000 different scenarios as it lands on Mars before you even create or build a widget. So if you could do that and send Mars rover to Mars, and obviously we're now starting to do that in the construction industry with buildings, surely we can actually start to help to design cities and test and simulate cities more in the virtual world before we start to change and transform them. So the images you can see here, this is working with a partner company, Bentley Systems. They took 40,000 different images of Helsinki and have effectively 3D modeled Helsinki. And so the next kind of step, well, once you've got this 3D model, can you actually start to get real-time data from the buildings, from the transport systems, maybe merging it with the satisfaction data from the people living there and working there? Can you then start to say, well, if we're going to change this road layout, or if we're going to build a new building, then you can start to see, well, what's the impact of that on the air quality, on the right to light? Basically, are we still creating a space that people are going to want to come and play in, I suppose? So again, if we can start to 3D model and we can start to design and we can start to simulate and not optimize, then maybe we can operate. Then we reach the 2019 Blade Runner, or even the next version. But obviously, a nice place that you want to live, maybe like in Barcelona or Catalonia. So that's me very quickly. So if you want to find out a bit more, so you have a standout there. One of the things we've focused on is air quality. Now we actually look at outdoor air quality as well. So we've just finished a trial with Nuremberg where we can actually trial or test or forecast actually air quality up to 5 days in advance, and then we can actually start to visualize the impact of trying to change people's behavior. So if we know it's going to be really bad in 4 days' time, and we suggest, well, if you can take public transport, or if you work from home, or do something else, if you don't have to travel, then you can actually visualize the reduction in CO2, NOx, PM10, and PM2.5. But we also have an indoor air quality sensor, which we were showing out there, which obviously we spend 90% of our time indoors, unfortunately, and clearly we need to make sure that the air quality inside is also good and not obviously damaging our health. It seems, I think Lee's at the back. I think we're at 0, aren't we? So this is a good place to be, if so there we are. And then there's an energy configurator quick check, which we're also talking about. But please go over there. So that's it. I'd open for questions, if you've got any.
Lovely, thank you, Mark. So we've got one question there.
Just one question.
Tech UK are working towards a national digital twin. What does this mean for access to data for the public sector?
Well, I guess this is more of a question for the next speaker, but we took out efficiency, and I think if we can actually, and we have the technology, if we can actually start to simulate, and we can actually save an awful lot of money before we actually start to build and develop and change our cityscape. We can test it. So, but I think.
What does it mean for a company like Siemens, though, to have a national digital twin? How does it help you and other infrastructure providers?
Well, I think it also helps the argument. So if you're talking about, I suppose, big contention, HS2, well, what's the benefit of HS2? Obviously, we're very supportive of it, but if you can start to model, well, it's not only is it there to increase or improve capacity, you go, well, do I really believe someone at the front who's just telling me that? Well, if you can start to visualize it, I think, obviously I think the humans are, we like to see things, we like to visualize it. So if you can actually show, the impact of HS2 on the economy of the UK and how that actually impacts on people's lives, then I think people will probably be more supportive of it. So I think, it's also, if you look at a city district, if we're going to change an area in a city, we can actually start to visualize this is what it looks like. And also if you're asking, well, the citizens, well, can you input into the process? I must admit we have a video in the Crystal which shows a day in the life in 2050 in Copenhagen, London, and New York. And what part of it is that the planners can actually show, the city planners can actually show the population, this is what it may be like, this is the new building, you can vote on this building. Now, some planners who've been there said, well, isn't it a bit dangerous letting the public vote on these kind of things? Well, obviously we won't go into other things like that, but no, I think if you can visualize it, if you can showcase it, then I think people will be buying into it more, and if they feel that they can feed into it in a kind of intelligent way, I think that helps.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Mark.
Okay.